Hey everybody, we're going to try something a little different today. You've seen me using or referring to a 1/32 ounce handmade jig in some of my videos that I'm using under a cork in a float and fly type presentation. I'm going to show you how I make those jigs so you can try to make them yourself if you want. It's pretty simple, and it doesn't take very long either. So that's what we're going to do today, and I hope you enjoy it. So let's take a quick look at the equipment we're going to use today. Most importantly and first and foremost would be our basic jig head. These are jig heads that I buy on eBay. They're inexpensive when you buy them in fairly large quantities. 50 a piece is typically what I buy. You can see this is a 1/32 ounce ball jig head on a red sickle hook with no collar. You don't have the collar like you would see on a jig head that you were going to use with a grub body on it to hold the grub body in place. These are bare, no collar jigs, and that's so that you can wrap them and put the dressing on. We have the dressing, which is this Crystal Flash is the product. It's made by a company called Hairline, I believe. This is called Pearl, is the name of this color. It comes in lots of different colors. They have a great refractive quality for the light, as you can see even on the camera right now. It's just very effective and seems to do a great job as a fish attracting dressing. Then we have the thread we're using. This is the wrap we're using. It's 140 denier ultra thread. This is fluorescent green color. We also have some other tools here. We have some scissors to help us cut the thread and to cut the dressing. We have a whipping tool here, which we use to complete the wrap at the end of the wrapping process. We have a toothpick, and what I do is I use the toothpick with the black nail polish when I am painting the jig head, and I use the toothpick to make the eye on the jig head. You'll see how we do that in a minute. I also have some other nail polishes here. I have on the right of the two clear. On the right side, that's a base coat. On the left side, that's a product that I can use as a base coat or as a clear top coat. I'm going to be using it as the clear top coat today. I'm also going to be sealing the threads with that same product. And then I have the black nail polish, as I've mentioned, which I'm using for the eye, and the white nail polish, which I'm using for the base head color in this particular color of jig we're tying today. So this is a view of some of the end results of this process that I have come up with in some of the colors that I've found to be most effective. And these are just not that hard to make, and they're just incredibly effective lures. So this is a really quick step. You don't really have to be perfect with it. You just sort of slather on some base coat like this. Make sure it's on there good and even and not too heavy so it drips or forms bumps. After 2 or 3 minutes, that top coat has dried nicely. I'm sorry, the base coat has dried nicely, and we're ready to put a top coat on. Now, if we can get a good enough coverage on our top coat, we really only need one. Sometimes, for whatever reason, the top coat doesn't go on with full coverage. You end up needing to put 2 coats on. But if you can get 1 coat on and get coverage, that's ideal, because it seems that the smaller the profile of the head, the better action the jig has. If you build it up with too many coats of top coat or nail polish, then you end up, I think, building up the head too big. So, you know, there's no science to this either, other than you want to try to get good coverage and you don't want to overdo it. I'm going to try to wipe off some of the excess here so that I don't have what I don't need. You do have to work fairly deliberately with this stuff, because if you don't, you'll discover that it starts to dry and then smears and you end up with sort of a mess. Okay, so we've let the white paint dry a little bit on this jig head, and now what I'm going to do is add a black eye. Now, I will tell you, I don't have any indication based on my experience that adding an eye to the jig makes any difference to how many fish the lure catches. It looks a little more professional, probably more from the catching fish, not fisherman, not fish perspective of things, to have an eye on the jig. And I kind of like the looks a little bit better for my own purposes, so I do tend to paint an eye on them. So here what I've got is some black nail polish and a simple toothpick. And I just take the toothpick and put it through the brush on the nail polish so that I get a bead of black paint on the tip of the toothpick, and then I just come down and put that paint right on the jig head. And you get a pretty good finished product that way. Here is a close-up look at the eye so you can see what the product looks like that I'm talking about. It's not perfect, but it's not terrible either. Alright, so hopefully we have allowed the paint to dry long enough. We're now just going to put our top coat on. Alright, let that dry, and then we're about ready to start putting the dressing on. Okay, so we now have the jig head more or less dry and ready for the wrapping feature. So what I have here is 140 denier ultra thread, as I mentioned in the first part of the video. And what I'm going to do is kind of lay it on here, and then just as you wrap it a couple of times, and then you pull the tag end back and you just sort of continue wrapping down the hook. I wrap it about 10 times or so, and then I wrap it back up about the same number of times back to the top. Then you can let that hang. You take your tag end, your scissors, you just snip it pretty close, and then you've got your base wrap ready. Then I take my crystal flash and I kind of bunch it up and I don't want too much. One of the secrets to this jig is to get the right amount of dressing. Too much and it doesn't have the right profile. Too little and it doesn't have enough profile. So I try to get, I don't know whether you can get a sense of that, but about that much. And then I try to make it the length basically to the first finger joint there. It's about the right length for this particular jig. And I just kind of pinch it in my right hand. I'm left-handed, so I'm doing everything backwards from the regular person. Kind of cut it off so that I have a nice clean starting point where everything is even, and I hold that pinched in my fingers and I just lay it on the back of the hook just like that, and then I give it about 5 wraps, and then I go and give it a look, make sure that it's doing what I want. Now I've noticed for these jigs that if you wrap it too tight, it causes the dressing to splay out. And that's true, I think, for any kind of jig that you wrap. So you want to wrap it tight, but if you wrap it too tight, you're going to get that expanded effect. And for whatever reason, the more streamlined versions of these jigs seem to do better in terms of catching fish than the splayed out version. So from there, you're just basically completing the wrap. And it ends up being, you know, maybe 30 to 40 wraps. I'm just building it up. Nothing elaborate here. And that's pretty well ideal right there. That's all you need to do. Then I take my whipping tool. You don't really need a whipping tool to do this, but you can use one if you have one, and I think it does make it easier. I just kind of slide it over. I tend to do about 5 wraps, and then just sort of, because of more is better, I would say on this, I do a second repeat of the same thing, 5 wraps, and pull it tight. Then I snip it off, and I'm basically done at this point. I'm all finished with the product. What I will sometimes do is take some of my clear coat finishing stuff and paint it over the wraps of the thread, and that will help seal those forever. They'll never ever come undone. I'll show you how that works. Just take a little bit of this, careful not to really get it down on the dressing, and then just kind of paint those threads with this to really seal them in nicely. That gives you a jig that will last as long as you really want to fish it. And you have a finished product. Take it out of the vise so you can see it. There you have it. Part of the reason that I do this is because there's just no lure quite like this on the market. There used to be. This is based on a lure that we used to be able to get many years ago. It was tied by a person near where I grew up, and he supplied a local tackle shop with this type of product. But apparently he stopped tying these because he could make more money tying larger bucktails. It would take just as long to tie, and he could sell them for 6 or 7 times as much money as he could sell these things for. So he just stopped making them. But these are deadly, and since I couldn't get them any other way, I decided to start tying them myself. And I'd recommend you, if you're interested. It's a lot of fun to do, and they're very effective lures. Well, until next time, it's the Brandywine Angler, Manly Parks. Thanks for watching.